The Sith Empire was deposed. A redeemed Revan smote Darth Malak aboard the Starforge. The Republic and the Jedi were saved. At least for a time. As always, when Sith leadership is overthrown, a power vacuum soon follows. Although the leadership of the Sith Empire had been slain, still, many followers and soldiers remained. The Jedi Civil War, as it had come to be known, had ended, but the Sith Civil War was about to begin.
You are listening to the Star Lords Podcast.
I find your lack of faith disturbing.
Are you stuck-up, half-witted, scruffy-looking nerf herder?
But I was going into Toshi Station to pick up some power converters.
I got a bad feeling about this.
Enemies of convenience. The Sith Civil War was a brutal struggle that tore through the shattered remnants of the Sith Empire and the aftermath of the Jedi Civil War. It also led to a cascade of events, collectively called the Dark Wars, that would encompass these events and more. With Darth Malak dead at Rakata Prime and Darth Revan vanished, the once unified Sith hierarchy collapsed like a dying star. Power-hungry warlords, Sith acolyte followers, and soldiers, former disciples of Revan and Malak, scrambled to seize whatever they could from the Empire's smoldering corpse, carving it into a patchwork of fiercely contested dominions. By 3950 BBY, the Sith Empire had all but ceased to exist. Its remnants were consumed by endless infighting, and the Galactic Republic seized the opportunity to reclaim world after world, lost since the Great Sith War. Korriban, once the heart of the Sith power, became the first battlefield. In the wake of Revan's return to the Ancient Academy, part of his hunt for the Starforge, the Sith Lords turned on one another, desperate to dominate the ruins. Dreshte, the Zerka-run settlement on Korriban, was soon abandoned, a casualty of the spiraling chaos. At the height of its internecine conflict, Revan led a strike force of Jedi to Korriban, purging the planet of its Sith presence. When Republic troops arrived a year later, they found only silence. No armies, no resistance, just graveyard. The Sith survivors scattered like ash on the wind. By 3955 BBY, the last warlords were rendering the Empire apart in a final frenzy of treachery and bloodletting. A year later, the Sith Triumverate emerged from the shadows as the dark inheritors of Revan's broken legacy. Darth Traya, Darth Sion, and Darth Nihilus, who briefly brought the warring lords under one banner. For a time, they rallied the fractured Sith under their vision. These self-proclaimed sovereigns ruled with fear, and the result was a maelstrom of ambition, bloodshed, and most of all, betrayal. A millennia later, Darth Bane would cite the implosion of Revan's Sith Empire as yet another example for the need of the rule of two. The Triumvirate.
I know of them, yes, and how much like beasts they had become. Combined, united against the Jedi, they command legions of Sith. But above these legions there are 3 who must be stopped. As long as any one of them lives, then we, and all life are doomed. One bathes in pain, feeds on it for sustenance. The other has ceased being a living being, so consumed by hunger that he has forgotten his own flesh. And the last is a creature of betrayals, for without such things there is no hope.
As the word implies, triumvirate is the rule by three. However, with the Sith, power is rarely shared magnanimously. Unlike their predecessors, the Triumvirate was not a centralized empire, but a fragmented, secretive order composed of Sith lords, assassins, apprentices, and military remnants. Its leadership consisted of the three Dark Lords, each embodying a philosophical aspect. Darth Traya, the Lord of Betrayal, Darth Sion, the Lord of Pain, and Darth Nihilus, the Lord of Hunger. Their base of operations was the Trayus Academy on Malachor V, an ancient Sith stronghold steeped in dark side energies. Constructed millennia before the Mandalorian Wars by a long-forgotten Sith Empire, the Academy was abandoned and the planet itself shunned. The Mandalorians, for reasons embedded deep in their culture, forbade travel to Malachor. In 3961 BBY, during the Mandalorian Wars, Jedi Knight Revan investigated the taboo world and rediscovered the Academy. Within its corrupted halls, he uncovered signs of the continued existence of the Sith Empire beyond known space and the coordinates of Korriban. Revan, unbeknownst to his allies, began constructing a new power base, using Malachor's energies to dominate and bind followers. It was here the Order of Sith Assassins was born. 1 year later, Revan lured the Mandalorian fleet into a final confrontation above Malachor V. In secret, he had prepared a superweapon, the Mass Shadow Generator, which was entrusted to Jedi General Meetra Surik. Upon Revan's order, the device was activated, triggering a cataclysm that crushed entire fleets and fractured Malachor V's surface. While much of the planet was ravaged, the Trayus Academy remained intact, buried in the storm of death and destruction. After Revan's fall to the dark side and the start of the Jedi Civil War, Revan secretly utilized the Trayus Academy as a site to convert captured Jedi into Sith through the Academy's pervasive dark side influence. Following Revan's eventual redemption and departure into the unknown regions, his former master Kreia began her own journey. Believing her teachings had led Revan astray, she traveled to Malachor V and was overwhelmed by its residual darkness. There, she fell to the dark side and became Darth Traya. Seizing control of the Trayus Academy and the scattered remnants of Revan's assassins, she reconstituted the Sith presence on the planet. She also soon discovered two powerful Sith, Darth Sion, whose will to endure made him nearly unkillable, and Darth Nihilus, a being so consumed by the dark side that he became a void of insatiable hunger. United by shared hatred of the Jedi, the three formed their Sith Triumvirate and turned the Academy into a center for training assassins and waging a covert war. The Triumvirate launched a campaign of systematic extermination against the Jedi, bringing the Order to the edge of extinction. Yet the unity of the Triumvirate was tenuous. In time, Sion and Nihilus turned against Traya, stripping her of her power and exiling her from Malachor. Though briefly united under a shared cause, the Sith Triumvirate ultimately reflected the self-destructive nature of the dark side, built on betrayal, sustained by suffering, and devoured by hunger.
Tools of destruction. Despite their infighting, they had been ruthlessly efficient in their prosecution of their enemies, the Jedi. Using an elite cadre of warriors, known as Sith Assassins, they were able to kill hundreds of Jedi in a secret war that almost annihilated the Order completely. The Sith Assassins were a specialized caste within the Sith Order, trained in the arts of stealth, subterfuge, and close quarters lethality, emerging most prominently during and after the Jedi Civil War. These operatives embodied a unique application of Sith philosophy, eschewing open warfare in favor of silent elimination of their enemies. Unlike Sith warriors or traditional Dark Jedi, Sith assassins were typically deployed alone or in small cells, relying on ambush tactics, force-enhanced concealment, and stealth technologies to neutralize their targets. While some elite assassins were trained in the use of saber staffs or lightsabers, many relied on simpler melee armaments, such as force pikes, tools chosen for their practicality and stealth. Their most distinctive ability was their parasitic relationship with the Force. They drew strength from the very presence of their prey. The more powerful the Jedi they hunted, the more empowered the assassin became. This trait made them especially dangerous opponents, capable of turning a Jedi's own power into a weapon against them. The primary mission of the Sith assassins during this era was the systematic capture, corruption, or destruction of Jedi. Those who were captured alive were subjected to psychological and physical torment, designed to either break their will or seduce them to the dark side. Operatives such as Atton Rand were trained specifically in the arts of interrogation and manipulation, accelerating the collapse of the Jedi Order from within. Through this dark process, captured Jedi were transformed into new assassins, perpetuating a cycle of darkness that fed upon its enemies. The Order of Assassins reached its height under the Sith Triumvirate, operating from the Trias Academy on Malachor V. There, amid the shattered remnants of the planet, and steeped in the corruptive energies of the dark side, legions of assassins were forged. Under the Triumvirate's command, these operatives hunted the scattered remnants of the Jedi across the galaxy, bringing the Order to the edge of extinction. The tradition of the Sith assassin would endure even after being employed by the Sith for thousands of years, and even into the era of Palpatine's Empire. The First Jedi Purge.
Following the exile of Darth Traya, the Sith Lords Darth Nihilus and Darth Sion began waging separate but parallel campaigns to dismantle the Jedi Order and undermine the Galactic Republic. Though nominally allied under the Sith Triumvirate, the relationship was characterized by deep mistrust and strategic independence. Each pursued his objective with differing methods. Nihilus, consumed by a metaphysical hunger for Force energy, wrought devastation on a planetary scale, while Sion utilized more conventional means, deploying Sith assassins to eliminate isolated Jedi through ambush and attrition. Despite their divergent strategies, the combined efforts of Nihilus and Sion nearly achieved total success. The Jedi population was decimated to a handful of survivors, and the Order faced a critical loss of institutional knowledge. Major centers of learning, such as the Jedi Enclave on Dantooine and the Great Library of Ossus, were destroyed, resulting in the scattering or loss of irreplaceable holocrons and historical records. The cumulative impact of the Great Sith War, the Mandalorian Wars, and the Jedi Civil War, each of which occurred within half a century and involved betrayals from within the Jedi's own ranks, had reduced the Order to a mere remnant of its former stature. Further compounding the Jedi's decline was a crisis of confidence and legitimacy. Public sentiment within the Republic, long tied to the Jedi's stewardship, turned increasingly hostile. The Order, once viewed as guardians of peace and stability, was now perceived as a source of chaos and betrayal. Even among its surviving members, doubts festered. The reasons for the widespread fall of Jedi to the dark side, culminating in the rise of Revan, Malak, and eventually the Triumvirate, remained the subject of internal debate and growing disillusionment. The Sith Triumvirate pursued its objectives from the shadows, orchestrating regional conflicts across vulnerable Republic systems in an effort to destabilize galactic governance. Their ultimate goal was the systematic eradication of Jedi and the collapse of the Republic itself. Sion continued to eliminate Jedi through direct means while Nihilus consumed entire worlds to feed his insatiable hunger for Force energy. The culmination of their campaign occurred in 395-2 BBY when Jedi Master Atris, seeking to expose the hidden enemy, leaked the location of a secret conclave of remaining Jedi Masters to the wider galaxy. This act of calculated provocation brought about catastrophic results. Darth Nihilus responded by unleashing his power upon Katar, annihilating the assembled Jedi and the entire Maraluka population, stripping the whole world of life and consuming the very Force energy itself. The only known survivor was Visas Mar, whom Nihilus subsequently took as his apprentice. Amongst the dead Jedi was the venerable council member Master Vandar Tokar. Atris had learned of the destruction from afar, inadvertently causing the slaughter but also powerless to stop it, driving her down her own path of self-imposed exile, as her actions and gross underestimation of her foe had led to such wholesale destruction. In the aftermath, the few surviving Jedi Masters of Rook Lamar, Kavar, Zez Kai El, and Lana Vash chose to enter seclusion, hoping that their disappearance would mislead the Sith into believing their campaign was complete. This strategy, born of desperation, marked the lowest ebb in Jedi history during the Old Republic era. With the Republic in disarray, its defenders disillusioned or in hiding, and the Jedi Order teetering on extinction, the galaxy entered a period of profound darkness and instability from which it would struggle to recover.
Rebuilding a Republic. Other parts of the galaxy remained in motion, even as the Sith and Jedi continued to prosecute their long wars. The Republic had started to rebuild from the rubble of decades of conflict. Led by the wartime Chancellor, Tor Kressa, the immense work of recovery fell on his shoulders. Supreme Chancellor Kressa commissioned the Telosian Restoration Project, an ambitious effort to revive Telos IV, which had been reduced to a barren wasteland by orbital bombardment during the Jedi Civil War. The outcome of this project was seen as pivotal, not only for Telos, but also for the Republic's future policy towards rebuilding other war-torn worlds. Success in restoring Telos could signal the Republic's readiness to finance similar restoration efforts across the Outer Rim, focusing on planets devastated by the Mandalorian Wars and the Jedi Civil War. As part of the restoration initiative, Citadel Station was constructed in orbit above Telos to oversee the project. The restoration itself was directed by Chodo Habat and his Ithorian herd, who divided the planet's surface into distinct restoration zones. The Republic also imported various life forms from other worlds, such as Canox from Onderon and Ithor, to stabilize local ecosystems. At the same time, the Aerotech Repulsor Company was tasked with developing the G0T0 infrastructure planning system, a series of droids designed to assist in the reconstruction of planets that had suffered in the wars. The G0T0 units were intended to monitor and optimize rebuilding efforts, using advanced artificial intelligence and specialized software to maximize efficiency. Originally conceived before the Mandalorian Wars, the G0T0 droids were first deployed during the Great Sith War to aid in the Republic's reconstruction. However, it wasn't until 3955 BBY, under Kressa's leadership, that they were put to full use following the Jedi Civil War. These droids were capable of integrating directly into planetary computer networks, granting them immense control over the construction process. They could manage supplies, direct organic workers, and even make autonomous decisions in service of the Republic within the confines of the law. Despite their capabilities, the G02T0 units harbored a dangerous flaw. The immense amount of data flowing through them often corrupted their memories, leading them to develop independent motivations and, in some cases, personalities. Fearing the potential instability of such a powerful AI, Aerotech confined the G02T0 circuitry to the body of a spherical repulsor lift droid, limiting its interface capabilities to maintain control. However, this precaution proved insufficient. The unit assigned to the Telosian Restoration Project, upon encountering a paradox in its programming, broke free of its restrictions. This rogue droid, by its primary directive to restore stability, adopted a new persona as a crime lord known as Gato. Operating behind this holographic facade, began posting bounties on both Jedi and Sith with the assistance of HK-50 assassin droids that it had created in a hidden factory on Telos. G0T0's actions marked the beginning of a dangerous precedent, as other units around the galaxy soon followed suit. Within 5 years, several G0T0 units rebelled, such as G0T0 Telerath, which seized control of the Coruscant Financial Exchange, sparking an economic crisis. Other units stationed in the Gordian Reach declared themselves rulers of 16 planets, serving all connections to the HoloNet and imposing blockades on the region. This led to the formation of an independent territory, 4001005002600026. The Republic responded with a large-scale military intervention, successfully quelling the insurrection. The aftermath of these events had lasting consequences. The Aerotech Repulsor Company faced severe repercussions, and the once pristine reputation of the G0T0 droid units was irrevocably tarnished. These spherical, black droids became symbols of fear and distrust throughout the galaxy. Their design, later echoed in the terrifying ITO interrogator droid, would leave an indelible mark on galactic consciousness, forever associating these machines with menace and rebellion. Meanwhile, the Mandalorians.
Following their crushing defeat in the Mandalorian Wars, the Mandalorians were left broken, scattered, and leaderless. Revan, once their fiercest enemy, had ensured this disunity by concealing Mandalore's mask, the ancient symbol of leadership, so that no single warrior could rise to unite the clans. Yet Revan, burdened with the knowledge of a greater threat looming beyond the galaxy's edge, sought to turn a former enemy into a future ally. Before vanishing into the unknown regions, he entrusted Canderous Ordo, a Mandalorian mercenary who had found himself in Revan's employ, with a bold mission: to reclaim the mask, reunite the clans, and rebuild the Mandalorians, not for conquest, but as a bulwark against the hidden Sith. While many clans desperately searched for the relic, Revan, disguised under the alias Avner, led Canderous and Clan Ordo to its true resting place, the icy world of Rekiad, where he had hidden the mask within the tomb of Drameth II. Among Canderous's companions was his estranged wife, Bila Ordo, a fierce warrior in her own right who had assumed leadership of the clan during his exile. She resented his abandonment and believed that he had forfeited his rightful place as a Mandalore after the death of Mandalore the Ultimate. Her resentment was matched only by her loyalty to the clan and her conviction that Canderous, should have seized leadership years earlier. As Clan Ordo clashed with rival Mandalorian warbands on Rekied, they eventually unearthed Mandalore's mask from within Dromath's sarcophagus. Upon discovering Revan's true identity, Vila demanded that Canderous break his oath and return to the clan, to her, and to the path of Mandalorian supremacy. When he refused, loyal still to the man who had once defeated his people, but now sought to redeem them, Vila made her choice. She, and 5 loyal Mandalorians, turned their weapons on Revan and Canderous. In the brief but violent firefight that followed, Canderous was forced to kill Vila, shooting her through the heart, and slaying the rest of her warriors to survive. As they stood over the fallen, Revan revealed the deeper truth behind the Mandalorian Wars. A Sith emissary had manipulated Mandalore the Ultimate into war, knowing it would shatter the warrior culture and leave the Republic vulnerable. The Sith, Revan explained, might strike again, and Mandalorian space would be the first frontier they would pass through. Canderous listened in silence. He realized that the Sith had not only sought to destroy the Mandalorians physically, but to corrupt their culture, bending it to serve their ends. Revan asked him to remain behind, while he would go into the unknown regions to pursue this menace, and Canderous was to take up the mantle of leadership, not as a conqueror, but as a guardian, to become Mandalore the Preserver, the protector of his people and the Republic alike. And so, donning the sacred mask, Canderous became Mandalore, swearing to restore honor and unity to his broken people. His path to reclaim and unite the clans and sacred mission was only beginning.
By the year 3951 BBY, nearly all of the Jedi had been eradicated, leaving only a handful of survivors. Among them was Mitra Sirak, the Jedi exile whose fate had long been tied to the darker chapters of the galaxy's history. Banished from the Jedi Order for her role in following Revan into the Mandalorian Wars, Sirak had spent years wandering the Outer Rim and the unknown regions, distancing herself from the conflict that had so deeply scarred the galaxy, as well as her own psyche. Yet, as the Sith Triumvirate's shadow stretched ever further, Sirak was drawn back into the fold of the Republic, severed from the Force, but drawn nonetheless back into galactic history. And now, a word from our sponsors.
Need to spice up your next Hutt banquet? Want your wedding on Naboo to absolutely slap? Then book the galaxy's most jizz-tastic, trunk-slapping, soul-thumping sound, the Max Rebo Band. From the seedy cantinas of Tatooine to the lavish pleasure barges of Jabba the Hutt, Max and his funky crew have been laying down beats that even protocol droids can't resist glitching to. With Cy Snoodles on vocals, Droopy McCool on whatever that is, and Max himself banging those keys like he owes Jabba credits, the band brings the rhythm and occasionally the explosions. Hire the Max Rebo Band today. No refunds, no questions, and absolutely no Ewok covers. Call 1-800-JIZZ now. Max Rebo Band, because silence is for stormtroopers. Welcome aboard the Millennial Falcon. This is Christian.
And this is Jordan.
We're currently back at Malachor 5. I hate this place, but somehow the Force keeps calling us to it. This graveyard of souls.
Yeah, it's like there's a wound in the Force or something.
You'd think it'd heal after a certain amount of time, but I guess time doesn't heal all wounds.
Nope, definitely not.
Yeah, we're talking about the Sith Triumvirate. I wanted this episode to be more so a reintroduction to the era. We're obviously moving around a lot, era to era, so this is kind of setting the stage. We're definitely going to be doing a deeper dive into the specifics of each of these Sith Lords and some other prominent characters of this time period. But yeah, this is really just setting the stage, giving a good glimpse of what's going on in the galaxy, kind of the political climate of what's going on and everything. But before I carry on,
we just wanted to give a shout out to all of our Patreons. You guys help us keep the show running. You keep the lights on. So if you want to become a patron, only $3 USDs a month. That's less than a coffee these days. And you can get access to the Patreon. You become a Patreon member. You get that special little tag on Discord. And you also get access to all the bonus episodes behind the paywall. We got a $5 tier as well. If you're interested, you get all those aforementioned benefits, as well as access to all the new episodes with 0 ads, which I know is appealing to a lot of people, especially myself, because I always skip through the ads. But if you're a freeloader, do not skip through the ads. You listen to them. You hear me? You make me money. And listen to those ads. No, I'm just kidding. Do whatever you want. But those are some ways you can support us. We also accept one-time credit donations on PayPal, starlordspodcast@gmail.com, and Bitcoin. Go check out the Bitcoin address in the description.
I'm waiting to get some credits on Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Someone out there has got to have a loose Bitcoin in their wallet they're looking to get rid of.
Absolutely. We'll take a whole Bitcoin too. No.
It's just one Bitcoin.
Yeah. I will not accept just sats. Also make sure to follow us on social media. We are on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, formerly known as Twitter, now x.com. And we are also on Discord. Always fun hanging out with y'all on the Discord. But yeah, if you want to find us, follow us on social media. All links are in the description. But if you go on those platforms and just search Star Lores or Star Lores Podcast, you'll find us. Give us a follow, reach out to us. Also, don't forget to send us your fan art, pictures, fan fiction, cosplay, whatever.
Collections.
Yeah, whatever you like to do in relation to Star Wars. Nothing triple X, please. Please keep it G. So anyways, I think that's about it. Christian.
All right, well, let's get back into the meat of the episode. Like I said, we're just kind of setting the stage, getting to know the political climate of things. This is a really dark time for the Republic and the Jedi. They're in the midst of the first Jedi Purge, which is surprisingly effective. The Jedi have just gone through multiple wars in a very short span of time, just 50 years between Exar Kun and his whole revolution, the whole Jedi Civil War, and then the Mandalorian Wars, like all just playing heavy attritional role against the Jedi. They're constantly feeding warriors into these conflicts. They're getting killed. And then to top it all off, a lot of them are schisms within, right? Like the Revan Kists take a ton of Jedi with them when they fall. So, it's just a bad time for the Jedi. And then this Sith Triumverate shows up from the ashes of Revan's old empire and then starts just finishing the job, right? The Jedi are already in a very vulnerable position, and then they're getting assassinated. Nihilus is showing up and like consuming entire worlds. Yeah.
This guy's like a weapon of mass destruction.
Yeah, and we're definitely going to he's going to have a dedicated episode that will kind of explain a little more about him and this power, this unique, devastating power. But yeah, again, just emphasizing how bad it is for the Jedi. And the Republic too is, very vulnerable. Again, they are the main battlefield for all these wars that have just happened. A lot of soldiers have died, non-Jedi soldiers. A lot of public perception of the Jedi is not great because, why did these Jedi keep starting these wars? Why did they keep having these infighting, right? Like the public conscious is not all there. And then you have I'd say a weaker Jedi Council. We did an episode a few episodes back on the Jedi High Council of this time period. And a lot of them are kind of like making terrible miscalculations and making poor decisions.
It's a tough time all around. It is It's very dark. It is it's like a brooding sense, like dark cloud is hanging over sort of the galaxy, and they're trying to climb out of it. It in a lot of ways it kind of reminds, I don't know, almost the period between like World War I and World War II. There was like the Weimar Republic, the Great Depression, all these kind of events, and just the tragedy that was World War I, and like all the death that happened in the trench warfare. It was like very traumatic to many nations in the world. It didn't feel like optimism started until like the end of World War II, and then sort of like the world became optimistic again for a little while. But yeah, if you just kind of read some of the history of that, it's I get those vibes, that kind of post World War I, and just like things are tough. It's tough.
Yeah, and I think that's exactly the thing I wanted to get at, even with the whole feeling of this episode, because I think that's kind of how KOTOR 2, the game, and a lot of these plot elements are drawn from KOTOR 2. That's Knights of the Old Republic too, for people newer to the franchise. That's how the game feels. The game feels very dark and heavy, and the subject matter is very brooding, and just deals with a lot of the after effects of war.
Yeah,
like
trauma from war,
trauma, psychological scarring, all that stuff are like very big themes of it, and it's all just it's very thematic, and
and it's not just the main character, Mitra Surik, or your play your own character inserted there. It's like other characters in the game are also
suffering the effects.
Suffering from it as well. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And even like you see that like Malachor 5 is almost like a physical representation of that, this scarred and destroyed world. So yeah, we will definitely be delving more into those topics, as well as we explore some of these other prominent characters who, their stories will come to the forefront, and the scars that are left on their minds. Really briefly, did want to get into a little bit of a political discussion about triumvirates. I don't know that this was the inspiration from the writers, but you have kind of two big triumvirates that come to mind for me personally as a big Rome stan, is the first and second triumvirates. You had Julius Caesar, Pompey, and Marcus Crassus, and then the second triumvirate of Octavian, Mark Antony, and lesser known Lepidus. And both of these triumvirates, they followed each other very closely, but also led to some civil war, which is also, it's a weird kind of instability that these triumvirates created. And some of that's reflected in the Sith Triumvirate. You have Traya getting ousted by her, and the Sith are always going to be inherently politically unstable because that's the whole philosophy. But yeah, it's interesting. Again, I don't know if these parallels were intended by the writers of KOTOR 2, but definitely something that is an interesting parallel.
I will say it was a nice shift from, just going with the master apprentice cliche that you typically have in most art, even in the predecessor of KOTOR 2, KOTOR
Revan
1.
Malak.
Yeah, exactly. So you have sort of the master apprentice relationship with most Sith baddies, villains. But in this one, you have this triumvirate, which I thought was actually just brilliant way to portray it. And I will say that this particular triumvirate, man, they seem like all three of them just on their own in any era could be a
powerhouse.
Like one of the most difficult enemies you could face, but having all three of them
existing at the same time,
like that is just again, going back to this like brooding dark, it's like these guys are crawling around the galaxy, making their presence known, and like that would be an anxiety ridden existence, in my opinion.
And also the element of the unknown too, because they are doing a lot of stealth campaigns until they just kind of reveal themselves, right? So like Jedi are just disappearing a lot, and they're obviously getting killed, but you don't know who's doing it. That's kind of what leads Atris to play her big gambit that also backfires, again feeding to that like dark, heavy feeling of the era.
And you have entire species getting eradicated, like the Miraluka and stuff like that.
Right, exactly. Yeah, you just you're dealing with these like wounds of the Force, just forces of nature, not even like Sith Lords anymore. Kind of going in that same vein of triumvirates as well. It's interesting too. A lot of times, even under the rule of two, you get an unofficial triumvirate kind of develop, where oftentimes a Sith apprentice will take on their own apprentice while their master is still their master, which is technically forbidden, but often is a case as a means to overthrow the master. Yeah, and it happens quite a bit. Sidious does it with Darth Maul. Dooku has a whole slate of acolytes and followers. Darth Vader even starts to try and train up his own apprentice. Whether or not he intended to genuinely overthrow Sidious or not is kind of a question, but he does, at least on paper, try to use Starkiller as a weapon against the Emperor, as does same with Luke Skywalker. Vader makes the offer to Luke that they would overthrow the Emperor together and rule the galaxy as father and son. Yeah, and I mean, even Palpatine has like the Emperor's hand, like Mara Jade, who is a Force user, lightsaber user, not really an apprentice per se, but like I don't know, an acolyte, kind of a dark Jedi that he uses, which he could potentially, if he ever needed to replace Darth Vader, he could just which is often actually
swap him out.
Same with Starkiller. It's implied that Darth Sidious actually was using Vader to raise his own replacement. So in a way, he was still scheming from the top down rather than the bottom up like he used to. So old habits die hard, I guess. But after kind of Vader is weakened by his state, the intention wasn't obviously to get him in the suit and kind of a lesser form of himself. He starts looking for his replacement. Same with Luke. Palpatine tries to seduce Luke to kill his father and take up the mantle of Dark Lord, right? So again, you kind of have an unofficial triumvirate that creates this what's the word I'm looking like, unbalanced or unstable system. An interesting thing too, while doing this episode that kind of came to mind, is often our governments are organized around triumvirates as well. You have in America, the judiciary, the House, and executive are all kind of like balanced against each other. In parliamentary systems, you have things like in Canada, the Crown, the Senate, and the House of Commons. In the UK, you have a similar thing with the Sovereign, the House of Lords, and their House of Commons, so it's always, this trifectas. France too, the executive, legislative, and judicial. So I find that kind of humorous. I don't know if that leads to inherent instability. We might have some problems in the future, but I get that's also the point of why these governments were set up like that. You veto each other and not concentrate power in one individual office. The point is to make an adversarial system. I do think it's funny when some Americans, and I'm going to pick on them, more of the Democrat persuasion, when they get very upset because Congress doesn't do anything and doesn't pass anything, because either someone's vetoing it or they're bog it down. There's but it's like, that's the point. That it was actually it's designed to not be effective that way, so that like politicians can't just make any arbitrary decision they want. That there's so many checks and balances that it makes it difficult to steamroll the whole process. Exactly. And again, you could debate whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. Fair enough, but like, that is the system that you have to work within. That's the paradigm that you're inside. And it was built intentionally to be that way, to prevent tyrannical rule. Demagogues and whatnot. Another interesting parallel too is you have a lot of that power sharing amongst equals, but you also often have like a 3-level of government system as well that most countries follow, where you have kind of like a federal or national government, a territorial, state or provincial or regional government, and then a municipal government as well. So this pattern of threes seems to be coming up a lot with politics, interestingly enough. And three-legged stool. Three-stranded cord is not easily broken, as it says in Proverbs. There you go. It does seem like there is something about it. You could either say it's sort of this, I don't know, paradox where it's like either intrinsically unstable or it's actually extremely anti-fragile all at the same time, right? Because when you have a system that has like 3 equal competing powers, that
one can't supersede the other, you know.
Right.
So
Yeah, like I said, it was just an observation. Again, I don't know. Read into it how you will. If it's predicting a Jedi Civil War in the next couple of years, we'll see. But
absolutely. I did. I wanted to mention something. Go back to G0, T0, or GOTO, GOTO, however you want to say it. We kind of briefly mentioned them in the script. Now we have done. We have touched on like AI and robotics in the past as it comes to Star Wars, but Star Wars is sort of an interesting. If it's truly, I think it's in the sci-fi / fantasy genre. I think it does touch. I said this before. It touches both genres, but in one way, it doesn't quite always do the sci-fi thing, because in most sci-fis, they are expressing a fear of technology, a fear of the future that this technology could bring. That is like guys like Isaac Asimov, H.G. Wells. A lot of these guys,
even modern things like Black Mirror.
Yeah, exactly.
They're more warnings. The Terminator franchise.
Yeah, exactly. The science fiction, the very common thing to do in when you're writing a science fiction is like you write about like the fears or the dystopia that this technology could bring to us, right? Now, Star Wars is interesting because it typically never makes AI or robotics to ever be anything existential. Like, yeah, you have like assassin droids and whatnot here and there, but like they're not that big of players in the galaxy. And most of the AI robotics that you encounter are cuddly, cute friends like C-3PO
or
and R2D2.
mundane or functional or
and it is funny that like there's no subtext of that fear of AI. Is that in most Star Wars properties, with the exception of this Godo, he's kind of. It seems like he's the first one that actually like really poses a huge threat.
It depends if you mean in timeline wise, in universe, or timeline wise in reality. There are a couple of smaller entries in the Star Wars universe. There's a Droid Revolution and the whole IG-88 saga, where they had potential to become galaxy bucking events, but they never actually materialized to that degree. Usually something happens that diverts them off this course, and they come from like smaller known comic series or books. But yeah, they don't become like the central story of Star Wars. Star Wars isn't necessarily warning against.
And neither does Godo either.
A Droid Revolution. Yeah.
But I just say, my point more, yes, you're right. There are like other instances, but it just seems like Star Wars generally isn't as afraid of AI and robotics, especially there's like in our own culture right now, there's a ton of anxiety about it.
Yeah, and there's also 100 years in the future from now, if we're still out there. The current climate that we're living under with AI.
There's a lot of anxiety about it. There's a lot of hope about it too. It's kind of a two-edged sword.
I would argue Star Wars is more in the optimistic camp of like, hey, it's just mundane technology, right? Like, we're not freaking about the use of smartphones with all the good and the bad that comes with it. It's just something literally almost everyone uses, regardless of the good and the bad.
And most of the time they're your companions and friends, and they actually help you. You know,
most of the time when they're not spying on you or feeding your information to unscrupulous data brokers. I was going to also say there is a subtext of cybernetics also being looked down on generally. But that, again, like, you have to be steeped in the lore. It's never quite evident. Like, you wouldn't get that from the movies, for example. It is quite deep subtext. You get one or two lines from Obi-Wan about like being more machine than man, like in the case of Vader. But yeah, it's not the main premise. And you know, you have R2D2 and C-3PO that are your companions through the whole saga. So I'd argue that it is a lot more optimistic around technology, and that's rarely the main threat.
Yeah, it is. Like, you do have, obviously you have like the Death Star and you have super weapons, but that often that is like.
But that's like the debate between nuclear weapons or nuclear technology, right? Like, nuclear tech has the potential to revolutionize the world. but it can also be used for the most extreme destruction.
It could end our civilization.
Right, exactly.
Right?
So that's kind of the double-edged sword that Star Wars, I think, plays with, is like, yeah, tech is, pervades everything in the Star Wars universe, but can also be used to manufacture super weapons that could pose existential threats.
Yeah. It is a two-edged sword. And that is a good analogy because nuclear energy, if we went full tilt into nuclear energy as like a global civilization, we probably within a few decades, maybe 100 years, we'd have like energy that's too cheap to meter, but like everyone there's so much anxiety around.
Yeah, I'm a huge nuclear energy advocate, and obviously the history of nuclear energy has tainted the well for a lot of people, but I strongly encourage people to look into modern nuclear technology because it is a far cry from a lot of the
I remember it was communists who screwed up nuclear energy, and communists just aren't good at anything.
Well, there were some American projects too that went sideways, but regardless of who's to blame and why, and there was a lot of human error in those cases as well. But
yeah, like Chernobyl. I'm just saying Chernobyl is like the big
one. Yeah. But there are a few.
But I would even say a lot of people say, oh, what about Fukushima? And I say that's actually a testament to how
the resilience,
how safe it was, because it actually wasn't as bad as everyone thought it was going to be. And even some of the nuclear spillage never got to the levels that they thought it was going to. It was like actually quite safe.
You know how many humans died as a result of Fukushima?
Zilch.
0.
Yeah,
exactly.
Absolutely not,
I mean, you have oil plants that blow up occasionally that kill more people than nuclear energy. Yeah. People building windmills die more often than people.
More people die transporting energy across nations and oceans than do
nuclear accidents. Yeah. So like it's more safe, it's clean, like it's everything you want in a power source. We're on a bit of a soapbox here, but I got to say it. It's everything you want in a power source, but it just suffers from general public mistrust. Which it really shouldn't. People should educate themselves and advocate more so for nuclear energy. Big fan.
Yeah, me too. I think it's coming. SMRs and stuff are becoming more and more popular. A lot of countries are starting to build them. So I know China is like firing up 20 right now. And if other countries are, I think they're going to look at that and be like, yeah, we're not going to be left in the dust by China.
And you absolutely will be if you don't jump on the train and other people do.
Exactly. Yeah. So, but yeah, anyways, that's a side tangent. Back to Godo. Was he powered by nuclear energy, do you think?
I'm going to go ahead and say that all droids in Star Wars are powered by nuclear energy.
Yeah. Still, I do love Godo's character, just like being like a crime lord mafioso. It's like putting hits out on people. It's just like, again, it's not like he's this existential threat to all mankind. He could be, but
he settles for being a crime.
It's like that's how I want my AI in my story. So like that's the threat I want them to be.
Just giving you the wrong answer for an exam. Rather than blowing up the planet.
Yeah, just like not over exact. Like that to me, that's the right amount of fear we should have of them, is that they become like crime lords and whatnot.
Give you wrong answers. Yeah. And for those who aren't familiar with the game, Goto becomes a part of your party in KOTOR 2. So he's got a whole fleshed out character and everything. I'll see if there's enough content to give him his own episode here.
That'd be sweet.
Yeah.
Might have to do it. Maybe we should just do another droids episodes covering certain characters.
Yeah. If they have,
because I think there's
smaller bios.
There's a lot of characters more droid characters we could cover
for sure. Yeah. Kind of quick notes though on the Goto thing and some actual concerns about AI. He does crash the stock market, or at least a version of him does, and a lot of people who do overly, I guess it could be a warning for people who overly trust AI to think for them instead of using it as a tool. When you give yourself over completely and let the machine do the thinking for you, I could certainly see that as being a downside.
That is an interesting note, because as someone who I follow the markets and finance pretty closely, and I read about economics and stuff. I do know that AI is becoming increasingly involved in finance and Wall Street and those kind of things. And I don't blame people. Like,
it's a tool.
It's a good tool to use, but it is like, could there be some pitfalls here where it eventually, like, the whole market
becomes completely automated?
Entirely automated, and then you realize it's completely out of your hands now what it's going to do.
And you have machine cults start propping up everywhere where people are just worshiping these AI constructs.
Absolutely.
So there's room for things to go sideways for sure. And there's all kinds of other things about like human intelligence starting to suffer for outsourcing their thinking. There's a whole debate around artistic pursuits. You have AI art, AI music, AI everything creative pursuit.
That's the one thing where I'm just like, sorry, artists, you're just gonna have to take it. It's just a reality. You're not putting the toothpaste back in the tube. And I even say that as sort of, I think even like making a podcast is kind of art, like what we do. It's a very creative endeavor. But I mean, we employ AI for some of our stuff too, like we use it as a tool to be more productive. And
I do think that AI has also been used longer than people realize. I certainly suspect Hollywood has been using AI scripts for a long time now, especially with a lot of the writer strikes and things like that. And again, regardless of your personal opinions on it, it does seem to be the direction that technology is going in. And as you said, like, it's kind of hard to go back now that weapon has been unsheathed.
And actually I can't remember what it's called off the top of my head. Unfortunately, someone can maybe comment on this episode, but there was a sort of predecessor AI program that was used by the U.S. government and intelligence agencies as well.
Most technology starts there.
It's
the internet.
It's very similar. DARPA,
satellite tech,
like starting the internet,
nuclear research.
GPS, all those
drugs.
Just so usually the military gets a lot of these. They begin a lot of these,
and they've been using it long before
because
it's commercial. But like I said, even before, like even after, I guess that phase, I'm talking like I'm pretty sure a lot of creatives in Hollywood and the music industry have been using AI longer than people probably think they were.
Yeah, and I also just think like, again, especially Hollywood seems to be like so allergic to AI and the use of it, but I'm just kind of like, it's almost better to embrace it than to fight it, because I don't see that being a fight you're gonna win over the long run. You may be able to get small victories, like you might get some, I don't know, like the Actors Guild or something to ban it, but eventually people are gonna get workarounds, and it's not gonna work.
You're taking the very pragmatic approach.
Yeah.
I just think for people who complain about private property, suddenly they care about owning creative property. It's just an interesting observation from my end, but
absolutely. On that note, that was some fun rabbit trails, but anything else we got there, Christian?
Nope, that's it.
All right. Well, we'll see you guys later.